Hey everybody, my name is Fleupisher and welcome back to another Danganronpa 2 Goodbye Despair, where we're reading it. So, we just escaped the gymnasium, quoted to the nurse's office, and Junko is telling us that we're a disappointment. That's basically it. And Mukuro is kind of strong with everything. She is like betraying Junko or not betraying Junko. But let's just keep continuing. Snap. A harsh sound came from Monokuma's mouth. That's all my circuits overloading. It's been so long since angry. Meet me on the roof of the school. I'll smash out all your baby teeth. Monokuma starts shadowboxing in front of Mukuro, who remained frozen in place, clutching a blood bag in her hand. She still looked confused, and Monokuma threw up his arms in frustration. You're so disappointing. I can't even predict it anymore. Roar. A threatening roar burst from Monokuma as he leapt as Mukuro. He leapt at with his sharp claws extended. At that moment, her face became completely us. It was not a conscious action. But of instinct she honed during her time with Fenrir, temporarily suppressed her emotions as she countered Monokuma's attack. Mukuro was special. Following up his attack, Monokuma continued to Mukuro. I guess you're not much of a disappointment to fighting. In fact, if you were so that you died from his touch, that would be in its own way. But right now, you're just incompetent at everything. Sorry, I couldn't help blocking your attack. But I fight you, Junko. After all, I'm all you have. I'm the only one who understands you at all. Mukuro's words were riddled with endless dismay. The contrast between her usual stoic self and the way she was acting now, people might assume she had multiple personalities. However, Monokuma just quietly stared at her. He was perfectly still, as if all his punches had powerfully. But continued to share her feelings. This way I can just leave you alone. And then, Monokuma broke his silence. At that moment, a monitor in the nurse's office lit up, displaying a girl's face, Kyoko and Enoshima. At the same time, a voice completely unlike Monokuma's began to play from the speaker. Hey, Mukuro. Junko. It had since Mukuro had heard her sister's real voice. Her face remained emotionless, excitement sparkled in her eyes. However, immediately dulled. I'm grateful to you, Mukuro. I mean it. Junko's from speakers sound very gentle. Junko? I'm really sorry. I said so many things to you. I have tried to you earlier, and I was about to make you do something horrible just now. Even though I know about you from Makoto, you don't have to force yourself. Even if you didn't notice, it would be obvious to anyone looking at you. You never cared photos. Makoto said he was going to take one. You made sure you were facing the camera. And then, Junko and Enoshima, the ultimate despair, flashed a smile. A pure smile. On the monitor, she looked like a normal high school girl, sister. And yet, Mukuro could feel this and anxiety encasing themselves around her. I thought you should have tried harder to take pictures with Makoto. But I guess that's what makes it so disappointing. Still, even though you're disappointing and annoying, I still love you. Mukuro trembled upon hearing those words. I love you. That's all she ever wanted to hear her sister say. Mukuro believed. No matter what Junko said, she believed she really loved her. She believed she was the only one who could truly understand the despair known as Junko and Enoshima. She was naive. As soon as she heard Junko say, I love you, Mukuro realized she never completely understood her sister. It was only at this moment that Mukuro finally understood sister's feelings. Mukuro's words right now were kind. Perhaps that kindness was completely honest. The words, I love you, might have been true as well. However, for Junko and Enoshima, this was her way of saying goodbye. She was severing the ties between them. It was painfully clear to Mukuro. And then, before she could even say anything, the girl in the monitor made a remark that cut Mukuro to the bone. I'm sure some come true. But the spares never talk to each other like this. A simple truth stepped into Mukuro's heart. Mukuro had no further use for her. Her own sister was parting ways with her. Mukuro had dedicated over 10 years of her life to the cause of ultimate despair, and at this moment, it all counted for nothing. But those years no longer mattered to Mukuro. Her sister's rejection was more than enough to do the depths of despair. That's why Mukuro now clung to a small sliver of hope. Meanwhile, Junko was still on the monitor. Yeah, but did you really think I'd say something that nice? It's so annoying. Can't you just hurry up and be already? Mukuro hoped Junko would say something like that. She hoped that she'd start verbally abusing her again, or call her useless and incompetent. Mukuro was no masochist, but she'd prefer to be showered with bullets and contempt with this kind of emotional pain. But, I love you, Mukuro. The manager went black, leaving Mukuro to process the horrible goodbye she just received. And as if on cue, Monokuma started moving again. Isn't family love so nice? By the way, did you know that in about half of all murder cases, the killer is a family member? Monokuma spoke in his usual tone of voice, but it was unclear if his words were getting through to Mo. He let the blood bag in her hand fall to the floor and tied her grip on the iron bar still holding. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Junko, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. She moved quietly as if she were chanting a spell and walked past the bloody floor to Makoto's bedside with the iron bar in her hands. I'll do it properly. Do it. So, said Monokuma packing up. What are you gonna properly do to her with that big twat you got there? Are you gonna do him? Or are you gonna do him in? Either way, I'm starting to feel some heart-throbbing excitement. Mukuro looked like she had been completely broken. Monokuma walked closer to her with eager anticipation. Suddenly, Monokuma's body silently floated into the air. Huh? With no expression on his face, Monokuma tried to see what had just happened to him. And in the blink of an eye, iron bar ripped through his body. The tip of the bar, which had been cut tightly earlier into a sharp point, went straight to Monokuma and stabbed into a surveillance camera. The lens was completely destroyed, and the camera shot out sparks as it broke down. The iron bar was still stabbed into the camera as Monokuma dangled from the other end. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but only static came out. A few seconds later, his functions came to a complete stop. Making a sound at all, Mukuro had kicked Monokuma into the air. Soon as Monokuma's power source and his palm circuit had perfectly aligned with the surveillance camera in his office, Mukuro plunged the iron bar into all three of them. No one utilized such a technique. Not even an ultimate. All the hesitation until Mukuro had vanished. Her eyes sparkled like a panther stalking his prey at night. A tense aura surrounded Mukuro, even more so than when she fought Sakura earlier. Ignoring Monokuma's lifeless form, she looked at Makoto as he breathed softly and remembered her sister's parting words. So this is despair, she mumbled to herself. So sorry, Junko. I never really understood what despair was. She spoke without emotion, like a machine. It's going to be alright now. I finally understand. Hidden with passion began to stir. I make sure I make you, Junko. I make sure I fill you there. I'll save Makoto. I make sure the others don't die. Let them escape from this place. I deal with the people on the outside too. You have had so much time and killed so many people for the sake of this plan. And I'll destroy every last remnant of it. For you. This was an act of vengeance towards the sister who had abandoned her. This was an act of mercy. Stuck between the ultimate despair and the hope she had for Makoto, Mukuro was being refined into something that was unlike despair or hope. And she had no way of knowing where her path would lead. Over 10 minutes had passed. One of the students leaving the gym and making their way to the nurse's office rang throughout the hell. Genocide Check had continued to jot Sakura's attacks with her tricky movements. But when Byakuya blurted out, "Enough already, you irritating pervert," Genocide Chuck stopped in her tracks. Oh my. Getting chewed out by my bespectacled Byakuya is making my masochistic side get all tingly. They say the line between sadism and masochism is paper thin. But in my case, it's like a Venn diagram. I can explain those hot waves of passion squirming from the top of my head to the tips of my toes. As she rambled incoherently about Byakuya, the other students tied her up with a microphone cable from the gym and locked her in a room. Half the students stayed behind to keep an eye on her. The rest left to search the school. As soon as the door to the Kyoko saw a non-fucked Monokuma with a hole in its chest, and the remains of a surveillance camera. It wasn't just in the nurse home. On the way there, students had seen several destroyed surveillance cameras and scattered Monokuma bodies. This clear violation of school regulations, but if Mukuro, those regulations wouldn't apply anyway. The Monokuma inside the gym was no longer moving, and the students had lost contact with the hacker, Bashiki Matarai. So the students assumed that Matarai had taken control of a different Monokuma and went after Mukuro on his own. With that in mind, Kyoko turned and looked inside the nurse's office once again. It was unusually quiet. The beds were empty, but Kyoko could see from the bloodstains that someone had been resting here recently. Look, they're already gone, Mondo remarked, but as he was about to leave, Kyoko spoke up behind him. I'm going to stay Chihiro and search for clues. Huh? Asked Chihiro, her timid eyes widening. Clues? Kyoko continued to speak in a calm tone of voice. Yes, there may be some clues in these Monokuma remains. I figured you would be the best candidate for investigating machinery. Sakura spoke up. But isn't that dangerous? Since Sakura could clearly hold her own in a fight with Mukuro, she had joined the other students in searching the school grounds. Kyoko shook her head and replied, I'm sorry to say this, but if things get out of hand, they will just be in your way. I think it's better if we search for clues here instead of doing nothing. Besides, we might be able to use Monokuma's parts to detect any radio pods from the outside world. You certainly have a point. Understood. We'll be exploring this floor for a while. Please shout for us if anything happens. Sakura left the nurse's office. Why did she destroy Monokuma like this? As Chihiro cautiously stood over Monokuma's remains, Kyoko started searching through the room. He zeroed in one of the beds and began studying it intensely. A moment later, Kyoko was satisfied with what she found, and held out a small sigh before she spoke. Sleepy time. Chihiro, that does you in advance. Huh? I tracked you into this camp of mine, so if anything happens, run out into the hallway and call for help. What does that mean? Instead of answering the question, Kyoko started talking to one of the... Let me say this first. That's a nice frame you cut, Mr. Bad. I'm prepared to hear your story. No matter how ridiculous it may sound, I promise not to decide if it's a lie or the truth until after I've listened to it in its entirety. Chihiro looked confused. She didn't understand what Kyoko meant at all. The ultimate lowered her eyes and turned to the ultimate program to make a request. Chihiro, does your laptop have a voice recording function and do you also have a microphone? Huh? Yeah. I want you to use that to record everything we are about to hear. But there's no one here. As Chihiro wondered to herself, she began connecting Monokuma to her laptop and turned on the record function. Sure would pick up every sound in this room now, said Chihiro nervously. Satisfied, Kyoko nodded and once again started talking to the empty bed. So, what were you going to do if I told everyone that I found Makoto? When she heard Kyoko say that, Chihiro looked back at her and she was surprised by what she saw. At that moment, the ultimate pole was kneeling on the floor next to Monokuma's remains. From that position, she was able to see it. Of all the beds in the nurse's office, there was one bed in particular that couldn't be seen from the entrance. Underneath that bed lay a limp Makoto. I plumped next to the bed and slowly providing Makoto with a transfusion. The contents of the blood pack were clear. Rather than blood, it's a saline solution used in emergency hydration. Though it wouldn't be as effective as an actual blood transfusion, it was enough to keep him from going into shock. Though that was the extent of Chihiro's medical knowledge. Already surprised at Makoto in the nurse's office, there's hope. Not Kyoko, but Kyoko wasn't talking to the bed that Makoto, which sent chills throughout Chihiro's body. However, there was nobody under the bed that Kyoko was facing. But the moment Chihiro noticed that, a voice rang out from underneath it. As soon as everyone's attention was focused on Makoto, I was planning to take advantage of that opportunity to take someone hostage. As Chihiro cautiously lowered her head until it was nearly touching the floor, she was able to make out who was talking. Surprisingly, the person hiding there was clinging to the frame of the bed. Yeah, I'm gonna call bullshit on that based on the fact that those frames are like super thin. You would definitely notice someone under there. Like a ninja clinging to the ceiling. Presumably, if someone had glanced under the bed quickly, they wouldn't have noticed anybody was there. Fucking bullshit. Though Chihiro had no idea how the person was able to hide under the bed for so long, she could at least understand that his strength was beyond normal human levels. There was no question that the person hiding under the bed was Mukuro Ikusaba. But you pretended to notice. Why? Mukuro's voice was as cold as ice, but Kyoko didn't even flinch as he responded. Because I want to hear your side of the story. I knew you were hiding under that bed. Compared to the others, the frames were slightly more pronounced. Chihiro tried comparing the beds to see if this was true, but she couldn't tell the difference at all. Only Kyoko's natural observation skills could let her see like that. Mukuro seemed to come to another similar conclusion, and appeared from under the bed without making a sound. Her face was stoic and cold. Compared to the bomb inside Monokuma, Chihiro thought she was even more terrifying. However, Mukuro ignored Chihiro and shifted her gaze at Kyoko. She leaned against the wall and let her arms fall to her sides as she threw out another question. Why do you want to hear what I have to say? Kyoko thought about the simple question for a while, as she was searching within her own heart for the answer. If I had to provide an answer, it's because I wish to remain neutral. Kyoko quietly looked down. I'm currently missing most of my memories. I don't know who I am or what talent I had to be accepted. Into this school. Right, yeah. She could hear Chihiro gasp behind her. But Kyoko didn't mind and continued. But even so, I believe I should listen to what you have to say. Regardless of whether you're good or evil, I must hear all the facts in order to know the truth. Good and evil don't matter. I'll come to a conclusion based on what I see and hear. I think that's the mythology that's been instilled into me. See, I completely forgot you were like that, Kyoko. But before I listen to what you have, I'd like to ask you one question first. What is it? Mukuro's reply was completely emotionless. Kyoko presented her question as she was asking it of herself as well. What was my talent that allowed me to attend this academy? The answer to that question was simple. Kyoko, you're the ultimate detective. Well, you just made like an entire game just way shorter. That answer marked a turning point for both girls. I have a better understanding of the situation now. Kyoko slowly raised her head and presented the theory. If my memory wasn't just a coincidence, your group has the ability to erase people's memories. With that in mind, if we take into consideration the situation that unfolded in the gym earlier, I can only come to one possibility. Possibility? Yes. What you said to Byakuya when he thought you were taking Kyoko hostage. You claimed that they met 2 years ago. It's possible that might actually be true. That Makoto called out Mukuro's name. The things that Mukuro confirmed and denied. Genocide checks outlandish claims. These key factors that Kyoko noted using her special observation skills were converging in her mind to form one answer. It's possible that Byakuya and Togo's memories were also erased, like mine, but I don't think the circumstances are quite the same as mine. But if our memory rolled so freely, it calls into question whether the day Monokuma appeared was really the same day we entered the academy. Like you said, it's possible that we've known Toko Fukawa for the last 2 years. What do you mean? Chihiro cried, still working and connecting a laptop to Monokuma's parts. Kyoko looked at Chihiro. Oh fuck, you're still here. Kyoko continued, speaking to both Chihiro and Mukuro. We thought we were knocked unconscious with sleeping gas the moment we arrived at the school. But it's possible that we are simply made to think that's what happened. For example, we may have already spent the last 2 years at Hope's Peak Academy, and the memories of the time were completely erased. It's even possible that we aren't even ultimates at all, just random people who've been implanted with 16 years worth of false memories. So Kyoko's claim sounded ridiculous, was completely serious. He looked up at Mukuro once again. Which means, I'm considering the possibility that your crazy story is actually the truth. Kyoko's declaration filled the room with silence, but she didn't let the silence overwhelm her. Kyoko cut through it with her own words. Without evidence, all I can do is make hypotheses. That's why I want to hear what you have to say, Mukuro. I have no intention of blindly believing. What you're going to say, or what the self-proclaimed head cook of Monokuma said. She paused and lies again, and declared with powerful determination. Even so, I intend to come to a conclusion as fairly and objectively as I can. But I can only do that if you trust me and tell me the truth. Kyoko's conviction was clear from her voice. Mukuro's eyes narrowed slightly, and a tapestry of emotions across her face as she looked toward Kyoko. But when she opened her mouth, her expression and voice were completely devoid of emotion. That's right. I completely forgot you were like that. Mukuro repeated this to herself softly, then faced Kyoko and declared, "That must be why Junko took more of your memories compared to the others. Very well, I'll tell you everything." And after Mukuro placed Makoto back onto the bed, he began to mechanically tell the story of a girl who wanted to fill the world with despair. A girl who only felt truly happy when she was filled with despair herself. A plan for despair that began 2 years ago, or perhaps even earlier than that. How the world was currently ruled by despair itself. Mukuro provided a brief summary of everything she knew about the plan. That's why it sounded more outrageous than Kyoko had expected. Through her story, Kyoko was able to learn the truth about herself. Who she is and why she came to the academy. The fate of the academy's real headmaster, Kyoko's father. As she listened to Mukuro's story, Kyoko remained silent the whole time. Her face went blank when she learned her father had died. Perhaps her memory loss and the absurdity of the situation helped lessen the impact somewhat. But there was no way Kyoko would even believe her story. After Mukuro finished speaking, Kyoko stayed silent. With her unrivaled mental prowess, she listened to Mukuro's story without interrupting or dismissing it as nonsense. Mukuro continued. "You don't have to believe me. After all, any pictures that could prove my story are with Junko. All I can do is talk." After she said that, Mukuro silently walked toward the entrance to the nurse's office. When she arrived at the door, she spoke again without looking back. "But even if you don't believe me, you still listened to everything I had to say, so Kyoko, Chihiro, thank you." After apologizing in such a strange tone of voice, she turned to the bed where Makoto lay, breathing weakly. "Make sure Makoto stays rested. When you make sure you give him some sports drinks from the dining hall or supply room to drink. Please." "Of course, but what are you going to do now?" asked Kyoko. Mukuro straightened herself up. Despair. I need to make Junko feel despair." Mukuro continued mumbling to herself as she opened the door. "There's nothing else I can do." "No, there's something you can." Mukuro stopped walking as Kyoko spoke firmly. "Regardless of whether Monokuma is really Junko Enoshima or Bashiki Madarai, if you're dealing with him, you won't be able to lay a finger on Makoto. I don't know, but if you're really concerned for Makoto's life, I'm willing to work with you. Unlike Bashiki, who's probably abandoned him already, right? I'm sorry. I don't really worthless." Mukuro looked away, then bowed her head as she left the nurse's office. "But, I'll do my best." The doors closed and Mukuro was gone. "Sorry for involving you in something so dangerous." As she continued to organize the vast amount of information that Mukuro gave her, Kyoko turned to Chihiro, who was still working on Monokuma. As she trembled with fear, Chihiro slowly looked back at Kyoko. Kyoko, about what Mukuro said just now. Your father really is in the fucking gift box in like the 5th floor? That's crazy." "It was like the 5th floor, right? Where did we find it again?" "I don't even remember." Chihiro's face turned pale as she struggled with her words, and Kyoko had to calm her down. "It was a secret room, right? We can't determine if he told us was true. There's no need to be afraid." But Chihiro shook her head and returned to looking at the laptop. "I think she's telling the truth. What are you basing that on?" Well, it looks like Monokuma is being controlled from the outside. Part of Monokuma's system had been connected to Chihiro's laptop and showing the data within his control system. And it was then that the ultimate programmer noticed something unusual about it. This control program. I thought it would be another year before the system became fully operational. Chihiro was so much that she was unable to continue speaking. "We can confirm that," said Kyoko, proposing another business to avoid jumping to conclusions. "It's possible that a similar thing developed in secret." But Chihiro adamantly shook her head that No, that's not it. It just looks really familiar to me. Kyoko looked over Chihiro's trembling shoulders to peer at the screen, but that's when she noticed. This program. Chihiro, did you create this? All the ultimate program could do was not weekly. You're figuring it out. First floor, main hall. Mukuro continued moving forward and was fortunate enough to not encounter Sakura or Mondo. With no interference from anyone, she made her way to a hall large as the gym and stood before the sealed main entrance. Suddenly, Monokuma popped out from the shadows to block her path. Within this hall, that resembled a nuclear bomb shelter, replete with all manner of heavy weaponry, Monokuma's silhouette was conspicuously out of place here. Monokuma is like out of place everywhere. His laughter rang throughout as he wiggled his body from side to side. What are you doing at the nurse's office? Did you eliminate your rival from Makoto's affections? Did you help play matchmaking instead? Either way, don't you think it's kind of adorable to put Makoto and Kyoko situation together? Suspense film, those two would be the last couple standing. But if this was a horror film, they'd just die anyway. It's alive all along. Splat! Blood. Plop goes to me. I'm a huge fan of characters think they're gonna live, but they really headed to a Final Destination. Nice, a Final Destination reference. Love this move. Crap story, but cool devs. Wait, what the hell is destination? What does it mean? Despite Monokuma's angry complaints, Mukuro remained unperturbed. She continued to stare icy daggers at Monokuma. She was waiting for him to finish speaking. Well anyway, so sad right now. I'm back into dealing with this disrupting community of this peaceful academy. I can't even keep one of my students from running wild. Time to say goodbye to your incompetent headmaster. I'm gonna use Monokuma evolution to become a big magnum headmaster and mold you into a decent student. As soon as he said that, Monokuma extended his claws and waddled toward Mukuro. So if I'm gonna mold you, then I can kill you first. Right as he finished speaking, Monokuma suddenly charged at Mukuro like a spiked volleyball. But Mukuro was faster and dodged Monokuma's attack. She jumped back, keeping a distance from Monokuma, just in case his claws could extend even longer. Just then, a shadowy figure appeared next to her. Mukuro touched her body to its limits and just narrowly avoided the biggest attack. When she landed on the floor, so what does the immortal killer want anyway? Are you gonna tell the others the truth and escape with? Even though you know what the outside world is like? Two Monokumas were speaking to Mukuro in unison. Honestly, I don't mind if you do that. I can just imagine the look on everyone's face when they discover. It fills me with such a heart-throbbing excitement. Two Monokumas continue to speak a stereo sound. You said you destroy my plans, but there's no happy ending waiting for you, no matter which route to take. And you only have your... Sometime you thought they'd be grateful to you, even if you guys escape here. Do you think they'll still forgive you when they give a whiff of that nasty air outside? Some of them might prefer the sins, and some of them might resent you for being kind and showing them the truth. Then again, this is all your fault anyway, so it doesn't really matter what they think of you. Monokuma made two Monokumas. Mukuro's expression didn't waver. She understood that controlling two Monokumas was a piece of cake for Junko. Mukuro drew an arm-length metal bar from seemingly nowhere and herself. It was the remains of the IV stand from the nurse's office, sharpened into a pointed one. With her weapon in hand, Mukuro responded in a cold tone. That's fine. I'm already used to that. None of the fear she felt when Monokuma suggested that Makoto would blame her appeared on her face. Her path was clearly clear to her now, and calmly issued her demand to Monokuma. Junko, open the gates. The shock of such a straightforward demand left both Monokuma's mom behind speechless, but soon they replied, sure, why not? Huh? Why? So we can all leave together. Not a straightforward answer, but Monokuma faced each other and began gesturing as if they were whispering to one another. Mukuro knew the movements were intended to mock her. Unmoved, she continued to speak to Junko directly. I think they'll understand if I show them the outside world. And then they will stop doubting Makoto. Oh, he's finding ways to disappoint me in Mukuro. Did you forget why the school has an air filtration system? It's true that the air polluted, but I don't think it will kill us immediately. I would give us about 2 to 3 minutes, then we die. Besides, it's better than being trapped in the and forced to kill each other. How can you be sure the others will go along with you? You know what I mean, right? Before the former headmaster got turned into space, he interviewed the others and they all agreed that they wanted to stay in school. That was even being raised. Betray their wishes? He stepped forward. I don't really care about things. Huh? You're all I need, Junko. Sorry, I'm almost right for you. I'm going to make sure you feel despair. I'm going to make Makoto and the others happy. If you want to roll in your own despair that badly, then I'll trust the hope Makoto take me and take my chances with them instead of you. Mukuro's brief but powerful words caused the Monokumas to turn and talk to each other again. Oh my, this doesn't look good at all, Monokuma, eh? This child doesn't realize her own hypocrisy. It's so disappointing that starting to reach off critical mass, right, Monokuma B? Two Monokumas looked at Mukuro, who seemed ready to destroy them and said, What do you think, Monokuma C? Mukuro was taken aback by the question, but her instinct suddenly kicked in and she immediately dodged away. At that moment, a third Monokuma claws extended by where her head had been previously. This new Monokuma unit landed with several sprints and faced Mukuro, who had clung to the remains of a surveillance camera, still at the ceiling. I agree with you both, A and B. The three Monokumas lined themselves up. To the students locked inside his academy, this sight would have been akin to a nightmare. Right up! I also want to note the quotations mark is like now to represent the three Monokumas. And when it was true, it were two right after each other. I think that's a nice detail, and I wonder if this is like actually used a lot in writing, because this is actually a clever idea to like convey this. I like it. The three units began to speak in perfect harmony as the six eyes looked up at Mukuro. Suddenly, they eight jumped away in three separate directions and kicked off one of the walls. The path of each unit's triangular attack converged on a single point, Mukuro, who was still clipped to the ceiling. She was surrounded by razor-sharp claws coming at her from different directions. But this situation wasn't even a nightmare to Mukuro. Compared to the time she found out three assassins who had invaded her camp one night back when she was still a member of Federate, this was nothing. This thought crossed Mukuro's mind as she dangled from the ceiling with one hand and thrashed her limbs around like a tornado. Intercepted by this move, the Monokumas fell to the floor with a crash. Mukuro landed on the ground, chased after one of them, vanishing her mad bar. Suddenly, she stopped moving and took a huge leap back. One of the Monokumas exploded with a deafening roar. He had detonated a bomb inside of himself in an attempt to take Mukuro down with him. But thanks to her own battlefield instincts, Mukuro managed to avoid the explosion. She looked toward the hallway, expecting the explosion to have attention of Sakura and others. But she didn't hear any footsteps approaching. Monokuma's voice rang from within the dense smoke. Oh, you don't have to worry. I already told the other students to assemble in the cafeteria. They were eager to follow my orders after I told them I disarmed the poison gas, and that a special police unit was coming to get them. I'm pretty sure Kyoko and others are all in the cafeteria by now. I'm sure Makoto is with them too. Sakura will get too rough with him, but I'm sure Byakuya will approach Makoto once he wakes up. I can just imagine him rubbing salt or pouring soy sauce into his open wound. Man, I'm getting all hot and bothered right now. Pooh-ha-ha-ha. As she listened to Monokuma's overlapping voices, Mukuro tilted her head slightly and pretty sure they're going to a special police unit. Are you really okay with that? No worries. Once I tell with you, I don't care at all if they found out I was lying. Still don't get it. There's a disappointment. It's really down on Mukuro. Not the reason why Monokuma didn't care if the students found out he lied, but rather that the voices of the Monokumas in the smoke were gradually increasing in number. Yeah, it's 5 right now. It was true at first and it gradually Well, it gradually increased. Oh, and now it's like, what, 8? 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Fuck, it's difficult to count actually. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, I think it's 10 now. As the smoke started to clear, the shadows of 3 Monokumas appeared. One that exploded couldn't have revived, so a new one must have come to taste. But there's no way Mukuro only heard 3 Monokumas talking just. As if the proof her hearing had been accurate, the Monokuma suddenly made them move. The 3 Monokumas bent over and began their upper bodies. From behind, new Monokumas emerged, like after images brought to life. This second row of Monokumas mimicked the earlier one only one frame of delay, revealing even more Monokumas behind them. Eventually, realized that there were 3 rows containing 10 Monokumas each. Did you know this is called a circle dance? Monokuma studied work in perfect harmony as they divulged information that had to do with the current situation. Mukuro already knew that multiple Monokumas were positioned throughout the academy, but only Junko knew how many Monokumas actually existed. Mukuro had no way of knowing if these stood in motion contingent. Flock of two-toned teddy bears continued to twirl around. Mukuro felt like she was being bombarded with hypnotic images. But faced with this abnormal sight, the old soldier remained calm and maintained her focus. She was nothing like the girl who had panicked early in the gym when Makoto was impaled. As she stood before 30 emissaries of despair, she slowed her breathing and allowed her heart rate to accelerate. It was instinct, not fear or panic, that sent her blood racing throughout her body, speeding up the reaction time of her cells. As her senses sharpened, the Monokumas began speaking to her again. Don't worry, I make sure Makoto doesn't. As long as everyone lives, I can reset the memories as I want. All your effort, hope, dreams and determination are going right in the garbage. The Monokumas took turns speaking in groups of 10. As if the mastermind controlling the Monokumas wanted to show off her ability to manipulate them. However, the older soldier knew what the true purpose behind all this was. She straightened her ears to the limit and noticed a certain sound hidden among the Monokuma's voices. Mukuro's face remained perfectly still as she kicked off the floor. The moment she moved to the side, a roaring sound shook the entrance hall. The ceiling mounted turrets started raining bullets down on Mukuro. The Monokumas were just the mastermind's decoy, while she tried to blow away. As if further trapping her, Monokumas charged at Mukuro through the system. The Monokuma charged at Mukuro through the storm of. Mukuro guessed that the mastermind programmed the movements and that she wouldn't get hit by a single bullet. She ran like Kate, evading waves of bullets and claws every step of the way. Programming 30 Monokumas and 2 turrets were also protecting Mukuro's route. This would be considered impossible for anyone who knew it was supposed to be Junko. As ultimate despair, she possessed despair-inducing abilities that surpassed the capabilities of any normal human. Reading is difficult. Her display of power was only fulfilling Mukuro with despair. The scene playing out in front of Mukuro was brimming with despair. The adorably deadly Monokuma laughed and danced like reapers as bullets whizzed through the air. It was despair to the point of absurdity, and it was all for Mukuro. But, in the presence of such despair, Mukuro felt a strange serenity. For me? Junko's doing all this? Me? Junko, are you watching me right now? In the end, perhaps Mukuro really was a disappointment. She clenched her fists. Junko, thank you. The sound of gunfire overshadowed her whisper, fell completely silent. As a member of ultimate despair, Mukuro was with joy. Though she was filled with emotion, her eyes had lost their sparkle. Silence filled the air. Even the gunfire from the turret seemed to stop for a moment. But that was only an illusion to the one controlling Monokuma. Something strong enough to silence the gunfire and avoid being picked up by the sensor spread through the school, with Mukuro at the center. I'll make sure I do this well. With that final thought, she closed her mouth and turned her emotions. As she ran through the waves of scorching bullets, the air around her began to grow colder. As this coolness spread into her heart, it began to beat in a mechanical fashion. Several seconds later, Mukuro's body and mind melted together and became one with her surroundings. Her temperature now dominated the battlefield. The Monokumas filled the air. Mukuro detected the movement and jumped into the air without any hesitation. One of the Monokuma at her, but she avoided his attack, kicked his body, and launched herself in midair. Bullets pierced through the space Mukuro was previously occupying, striking the falling Monokuma right through its internal bomb. The impact of the bullet caused it to explode, sending fiery Monokuma parts everywhere. As she rode the blast wave, Mukuro balanced herself in midair as she kicked away 2-3 Monokumas that leapt after her. She moved so gracefully she was practically flying. In contrast, the Monokumas threw themselves exploded near the main entrance, but their blast didn't even leave a scar. With full control over the entrance hall, Mukuro evaded bullets and confirmed that the bombs inside Monokuma destroyed the door, but she refused. Mukuro needed to kill what she must do to escape the academy. She had no desire to kill Junko. She wanted to fill Junko with air by instilling of Makoto, and that was Mukuro's goal. Get information. In contrast, her mouth stayed shut. But this did not mean Mukuro was not currently speaking to Junko. The situation, this battle of touching, was a conversation role. All she knew how to do was fight. She wasn't interested in else. She didn't need anything else. All Mukuro needed to be was a sort to fulfill her desire for despair. She was alone, was the crux of it, and she lived her entire life convincing herself that she couldn't do anything else. That's why power was like a language to Mukuro. A battle depth revealed more about her heart than mere words ever could. Her words were in the wind of savagery that blows across the battlefield, uprooting others who also speak the language of violence. This was true, even against her sister. When she would berate her sister, Mukuro couldn't talk back. All she could do was cower and apologize profusely. But it's different now. For the first time, Junko in a language her sister actually recognized. The child of despair who tore the world apart was speaking to her sister with the language of power. Mukuro's heart filled with joy. For that reason, she strengthened her focus on a conversation with Junko, and that emotion began to gradually disappear. On this frigid battlefield, Mukuro continued her hit conversation. Endless round turrets. Mukuro's words intercepted the last firing shot that threatened to shatter and mind in half. She quickly the Monokuma's hand increased in number at all, no matter how many she kept destroying. Not only that, it was that more Monokuma had been joining the fray until there were nearly 50 of them for Mukuro to fight. But Mukuro's resolve wouldn't break so easily. As she continued to wield her power, her heart began to fill with something that was neither hope nor despair. She learned despair from being abandoned by Junko, and she learned hope from her acts of violence. For Mukuro, who had no interest in this world, the small space in front of the gate was a reflection of her life, a representation of a perfect world. This disappointing girl, filled with endless disappointment who knew of no other way to live, continued her lonely dance. She surrendered herself to the rhythm of despair, which accompanies the music of hope. Well, I think with that, I am going to end this episode. Man, this is a heavy battle for Mukuro. Fucking 50 Monokumas and gunfire. Would be cool to see. I honestly this was more like a visual novel, like manga or comic, you know. But no, it's just text. Bit of a shame. But anyway, in the next, I think we'll be done with reading this. See you guys then. Goodbye.